let's say a PM who recently landed a job, in their first 90 days as a PM, what steps they need to do to build trust and credibility in their team?
Absolutely. So I think the one thing they should not do, first I'll speak about that, is don't start learning skills mindlessly. That go inside, oh, I want to learn SQL. I want to learn design, how it happens. Oh, I want to learn how analytics pipelines work. Oh, I want to learn machine learning. A lot of PMs do that. They go inside and they say, no, I'm a PM. I should know how to pull out the data. I should know. And what the second bad thing that you can also do is go into your meeting and you're like 7 days into the ecosystem and start suggesting features. Oh, why can't we solve it like this? Why can't we solve it like that? Now, that does the fundamental things that you have to realize is that problems lead to skills. Skills don't lead to problems. I'll give you an example. For example, you are a company who essentially creates landing pages. You're a PM for Wix.com, for all that I care, right? And now you realize that the landing pages that we create typically don't convert in a certain industry at the industry average of 10%, right? Now, this is a problem statement. You realize that, oh, we are making landing pages. We are saying that these are great landing pages for content creators and stuff like that. But the typical industry average is 10%. Is it really on my user how he creates the landing page, or are we giving them those features that they really need to do that? So what you essentially do is you go and look at all the layers. You say, are there enough design elements that we're putting across? Is the latency a problem? Right? Are our APIs giving us responses the same way? Right? Third, are we communicating the features in the most logical way? Now, if you do all of this and then you realize, oh, design is a problem, right? Then you learn design and then you say, oh, now I want to learn the principles of design because I know that this is a problem for my customer, and that is where conceptual design, information design, interaction design, visual design, all of these layers start coming in, right? But it doesn't start the way that you go first day and you say, oh, I'll sit with the designer, I'll create a wireframe. Doesn't work. So the first thing that you should do, at least as a PM, is go and just speak to your team, right? Happily, if your manager allows you to be part of a mid-sprint, great. Just be part of the sprint, just listen, right? And go and essentially just let other people speak. Sometimes the best way to gain control is to give control, right? So other people, let them speak, put their thoughts across, note them down, write it on a piece of paper, and then go back and do your discovery and come up with good questions and say, oh, you said this yesterday, I did my discovery, am I right? Right? And slowly and steadily you build some kind of meaningful connection in the team, right? Because that's the first thing. The second thing that you should also do, I think it's a very important thing, is that pick your battles very, very, very wisely. If you don't know how to prioritize, what I mean by that is, for example, a lot of PMs do also this. They are like super bent on doing things, and one fine day something breaks and you're new into the organization. You just pick up your call and you call your developer at 12 a.m. at 12 p.m. at night and say that pick and fix this for me. Again, doesn't work, right? You really have to really understand that devs will only, or other people will only respect you when you respect their lives, and realize that where you have to stand for them, where you don't have to stand for them, right? So if you stand for them in situations which are small, trivial situation, and you can tie that to the business objective, great. Because one fine day when you really need their help and you call them at 2 a.m. at night, they'll pick up your phone and they'll actually do it because they know that you fought for them at like 20 other places. That's the second thing. Fight for the team. Think of a team as an entity, right? Don't think of PM as an entity, right? And the third and the most important piece, which people generally forget, right, while they are like in an organization, and I think that is super, super meaningful, is that as a PM, you also have to really understand that from a team dynamic perspective, what you have and what you don't have. What I mean by that is, one of my managers used to say this: it's not about what you've got, it's what you make of what you've got, right? And that is where you start realizing that a lot of your strengths is interdependent on other people. You cannot do everything yourself. PMs end up doing everything. Oh, if the data analyst is not working with me, I'll go and just pull out the data. Doesn't work. In the long work, you have to make it work. You have to build that relationship with people, right? So first, understand your consumer very well in the first 90 days, like at the back of your mind. After 90 days, you should realize, I am the consumer. If somebody had to ask me, Shravan, what does your product do? You should be able to do that. The second thing, stand for your team, right? And understand their strengths well. And the third thing that you have to understand is where you have to build cross-functional dependencies, and then figure out what are the problems in that ecosystem and move to the skills part that I want to learn data science or whatever and whatnot, right? Yeah.
And how can PMs use wireframes or sketches to clarify product decisions without intruding on design?
Absolutely. So I think one of the things that you have to really understand is that from a design language perspective, PMs generally operate in the first two layers of design, which is generally the conceptual and the information design, right? That is where wireframes truly help. What I mean by that is conceptual design basically means, like, if I ask Mahmood, tell me, if you have to make a food delivery app, what would you first see? And he says, oh, the first thing I want to see is what are the restaurants near me. Now conceptually that comes to you, right? Or if I tell you, Mahmood, make me a maps type of an application, right? So you will say, oh, if it's a maps type application, it should have like a map like diagram on which people are essentially. That's the conceptual layer, which you can kind of make on a handkerchief and say, this is how I think the product is, right? Then you essentially move towards the information layer of it, where you typically say, the first user should see this, then this, then this, then this, because I think this is the flow of information that the person wants. Like, for example, you go to any website like Skyscanner, like a lot of people ask me this question, why do all of these OTA over the counter travel websites, right? So they have the same UX that you go and from to a number of people and search, right? They have the same damn UX. Go wherever in the world. The reason is because that's the information category. Because anybody who wants to travel says that I want to go from here and these many people, and then he wants to see the price, right? Similarly, that is where the role of a PM should end. Practically end, right? Say that this is my conceptual layer, this is my information layer, this is how the wireframe really looks. Because in a wireframe, there is no clickability. You don't typically talk about like you click and what happens, right? Then the value is in the design part, the UX, that is the interaction part and the visual part, right? These two things is where the true creativity of a designer comes out, right? So you have to aid the designer. You have to say, this is what I think as a product manager would be the value proposition from a product layer, right? Now you tell me what is the most aesthetic or the most usable way to essentially do that, right? And that is where you essentially make wireframes for. You don't make wireframes to dictate what you have to be built. You make wireframes to give a sense of the information hierarchy and a value hierarchy to the designer, that this is what I believe what the customer wants. And how do you present it in the best possible way? That's your creativity, and I will be supportive there. Yeah.
What transform a PRD from a routine document into something that inspires and aligns the team?
Sure. So I think a lot of people don't give importance to the objective and the background. And I think that plays like a very strong role in the PRD, right? Like, I'll give you an example. I was writing a PRD for some product when I was interviewing for this FANG company, right? And it was specifically for education as a product. The intro essentially was that why education is not working the right way, right? What are the proofs around that? What are the two tenets that are really, really important? So you have to, the PRD has to talk about 2, 3 things very, very clearly. One, the objective should be damn clear, that what are you trying to achieve, right? Then if the objective is very clear, you essentially talk about what is the scale, what is the size of the problem, how big is the problem, right? And the third thing is, what is your meticulous way and what kind of impact it will have. Now, if that narrative, it's like the narrative of a story. You build the right hook. You say that this is the hook, this is what it will do for you. Like, for example, if I tell somebody, oh, you play this game and there's a chance of you winning $1 million, right? And it's a 1/6 chance. Now that's a very powerful hook. You would happily want to play that game. The PRD has to do that. And in one of my sessions, I said, PRD is the love letter that you write to engineering if you write it perfectly, right? It's like, if Shravan is not there, will they be inspired by it? And only those stories inspire in which you can relate, in which you can give value to the person doing it. See, you don't write a PRD specifically only to explain your business case. You also write a PRD to explain that what kind of impact, if engineering solves these problems, will it have, which really ties it back to you. That you are building it. You are the developer who's going to code for it. You are the designer who's going to think for it. You are the sales guy who's going to sell it, right? And then you can essentially quantify it in meaningful way. Oh, I probably helped 100 million people get onboarded on this fintech app, and which allows them to have transactions. right? Now, if you go and you say, Shravan, will you become a product manager for UPI as a product or some obscure random product, right? I'll happily say UPI because the scale is clear, right? The volume is clear, the product experience is clear. That is what a PRD really, where it really stands out, that the narrative is extremely clear. If the narrative is clear, rest all are execution details. There you can make or break things. But if in most PRDs, product managers don't give a lot of importance to the narrative. I give a lot of importance to the narrative. It really inspires people. Yeah.
And what habits can help improve critical thinking in product decisions, and how have you applied them?
Sure. So I think one of the very important habits I have already spoken about, I think constraint writing is a very good way. Constraint writing is an extremely good way because, see, it's the same way I say that, Mahmood, I'll give you $20,000, make me a very good interior in my home, right? And you give Shravan $100,000 to do the same thing. Who will be more creative? It's 100% it's going to be Mahmood who's going to be way more creative, right? So I think that's the first thing that I really tell people to improve their critical thinking, that whenever you write something, right, you ask yourself like, oh, I just have to write it in like 100 words or 200 words, right? Like whenever somebody used to come to an interview, I tell them that write me a PRD about this feature or write me the spec for this feature, but the constraint is it's 100 words. If it goes beyond 100 words, I'm not reading it. The interview is over, right? Now the person has to think, what am I writing? How do I structure it? How do I put it in the most meaningful way? Because if you disuse space, right, you're done. The narrative is over. That's the first thing. The second thing I keep telling people, and again, it's a request to your audience, is that please spend 50 to 60% of your time reading anything and everything, whatever interests you, right? People spend a lot of time reading product books. How do you solve product sense? How do you solve? The world is not just product management fundamentals, it's system dynamics, right? I read anything. So most product management I've learned from Mario. Mario as a game, right? I used to play Age of Empires. I used to play Mario, and it was so fun. Mahmood, I'll give you a very good example. See an example. See, what did Mario do for you, right? You are playing a game and you're moving from left to right, right? But again, it's a constraint. You're only moving from left to right. So it told the user that in order to progress in the game, this is the step that you have to follow. Now that's such a powerful thing to do, right? So the second thing that I keep telling people is read about games, read about generalist stuff, read about just biographies, read about for all that I care, mathematics, music, for all that I care, and just make it actionable. That you learn something, you try that across, right? That's the second thing that I keep telling to improve your be curious. What I mean by curious is the functioning behind anything, how it works. If you find something interesting, spend time out. Like I read a lot of books. A lot of people ask me this question that, Shravan, what is your behavior of reading books, right? Do you read it like one book at a time and then you go to another book? Not really, right? I have like 10 or 12 threads going on at the same time, and I read something like 10 pages a day and say, wow, this is interesting to know, and then I apply that in my lecture or some other place, and then I go back and read another book, then go back and read another book. So I was more recently reading a book on human consciousness, how that evolves, right? It has nothing to do with product management, right? But it typically talks about how people think about life. I read a lot of books on religion, right? Religion is a very important dynamic of people's life, how they behave, how they do things, right? So that's the second thing that I say. Be curious, be horizontal, right? Read anything and everything, spend 50% of the time doing things that you're really interested in, right? And the third thing, and the most critical thing, which people again do, be damn consistent. If you're not consistent, there is no point. If you say that I heard this lecture or I heard this conversation between Mahmood and Shravan, I'll start reading books, you do it for 5 days and you stop again, and then you don't do it for 2 months, there's no point. Don't do it, right? So that earnest desire to grow should be an intrinsic drive. And in order to develop it is small steps. Small steps. A lot of authors nowadays have done this. So there is this very famous Stoic author called Ryan Holiday. So he now writes books like this. That there is this book called The Daily Stoic. It's written in such a way that you have to read one page, right? So that even the average reader gets that motivation to do it like the next day also, right? So a lot of people are essentially moving towards the gaming dynamics of education and how it can be transformative to you, right? And I think that's a very good approach. First, constraint writing. Second, Be horizontal, read anything that you want, that interests you. Go to Medium, take subscriptions, spend money on education. That's really important. And the third thing that I personally feel is be damn consistent. Pick up something, do it for a considerable period of time, and then make a choice whether it's for you or not.